Welcome to The Growth Agenda, a sales and marketing podcast presented by Kvadrant Consulting. In this podcast, we explore how commercial leaders can provide new answers to the old question, where will growth come from? We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Thank you so much for coming, Camilla. And you work in finance. I was just curious because I know a few people that work in finance, and I think the common thing for all of them is that when they were kids, it wasn't like they said, I know what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to work in finance. So I was just curious, when you were a kid, did you have any other thing that you wanted to be, like a veterinarian, or like did you have that kind of thing? Did you always know you were going to work in finance?
Yeah, I always had a dream of working in payments.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's a good question because every time we at events, it's always like the common question: how did you end up in payments? And no one is like dreaming of when you're 5 years old in school, saying, "What do you want to be? What do you want to do when you grow up?"
I want to be in payments.
I want to work in payments. But that's life. It just it's a bit random sometimes. I can't even remember what my dreams were. I think I've had a lot. I think it's been everything from a doctor to a lawyer to, I think I also wanted to be an actress at some point. But yeah, I ended up in finance.
So how did you get into payments? What was the journey to that?
Yeah, so I worked in London at a financial software company, a little bit by coincidence, actually, as well. I started out my career in Denmark in marketing. And then it was like a graduate program, and it took me to a few different countries, and it took me to London, where I used to also grow up when I was younger, and I loved it there, and I thought, it's a great opportunity. There's a lot of tech and a lot of tech sales, and that was basically quite quickly found out that's where my passion lies. So yeah, I started at a job in a financial software company, and from there I then also worked in the the software team. So I came into contact with a lot of fintechs, and it's super interesting. It goes so fast, and there's just a lot of things happening, and it's basically the forefront of everything. So that was super exciting. Then not Brexit. Well, also Brexit, but then COVID happened, and we were in lockdown, and I decided, maybe it's time to move back to Denmark. Head home. Yeah. And at that time, Klarna was everywhere in London. And there was an opportunity to join Klarna as the first person in Denmark, and I thought that was pretty exciting. So I decided to do that, and that's how I came back to Denmark. And then a few years later, I joined LUNAR. So that's where I am now. So a bit of a coincidence, but I've been in fintech for now, 6-7 years.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because it seems like for most people, that's what it is. It's like it's a coincidence what they end up working with.
Yeah.
Could have been something else, but it just happened like, the first job I got was in this and that.
Yeah.
And then if you're the right kind of person, then you'll find something interesting in that typically, and that sort of becomes your path. Yeah. At least that's been my experience. It's so random, what you end up doing.
Yeah, exactly. But now I've also learned that the fintech industry as well, also internationally, is quite small. There's a lot of people that know each other, so it's very fun to be in, and there's so many things happening all the time. So I think we will probably discuss that a bit more later. But
some of the things that we would like to talk to you about today is around partnerships. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's so central to what you're doing, the ability to actually form meaningful partnerships with the right partners that have a need for the solutions that you bring. So we just want to dive into, what's a good partnership? How do you set yourself up for success? Because a lot of companies are dependent on building these strong partnerships with whether it's their customers or go-to-market partners. So we think that could be super interesting to hear a little bit more about. But when you just think about that, what are you looking for in the partners that you go out and try to get for LUNAR?
I think a good partner for us is a company that really can gain value from what we offer, the solutions, and we call it a partnership because it's not just a solution or product that we sell and then leave. We really want to ensure that the customers that we work with actually grow, and I think it's in our interest as well, because if our partners grow and succeed, we grow and succeed as well. So it's a lot of a collaborative approach, especially also because I work in a fairly new product area, And it's important that when we build something, we actually build it for relevance for our customers as well. So it's a very collaborative effort, and they're impacting a lot of what we're doing. So we ensure that what we deliver is actually bringing some value. So a good partner is a customer that can gain some value, gain a lot of value, and we can help grow significantly with our solutions. And because also of the nature of what we are selling, it's also important to keep a good relationship as well. Hence also why we are really looking to for a collaborative partnership and not just selling a product and then handing it over and then go on to the next one.
I guess that must mean that you also have to be pretty good in your qualification of who you decide to work with, because it sounds like you're making quite significant investments as well in these customers. Have you noticed any red flags where you think, oh shit, this is going to be either an expensive partnership or a partnership with a lot of problems? Any qualifiers that you look for in terms of their engagement back to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot, especially we are a bank, so obviously we are not onboarding every type of companies. There are obviously some restrictions from a compliance perspective that obviously we follow through. So we do a very thorough qualification from a compliance standpoint, but of course from a sales standpoint, I think I'm very much into the very tough qualification, because it's a long deal cycle, it's a long process. It involves a lot of stakeholders, both internally from our side, but also externally from their side. So I think it's all about spending your time most efficiently. And then we obviously there is a lot of different ways to qualify, but I mean the classic ones on time and budget, and not being afraid to discuss that at an early stage, time commitment obviously, and then obviously the product and solutions. So we tend to actually the closer we get to close, the more certain we are, because we've done a very thorough qualification up front or early in the process.
And you can waste so much time trying to sell to people and companies that aren't actually interested in it.
Yeah.
Especially with these long deal cycles, the big complex deals.
Yeah.
It's just it's an enormous amount of time, not only for you, right, but for all these other people as well.
Yeah. I think you tried early on in your sales career to forget a qualification criteria, and then you never do that again.
Yeah. What about, let's say that you found the right partner, you're close to signing an agreement. Anything special you're doing to make sure you set up the partnership for success? Any dialogues you have, anything you're doing there?
Yes, I think we have. For me, it's really important to be have a completely aligned expectations. Both in what we are selling, what we're doing, but also in terms of the next step and the timelines. One thing is obviously closing, another thing is then implementing. So also having that complete transparency and that alignment. And then obviously the negotiation part which is an important thing in commercial. I think for me, it's really important that it's gonna be a win-win for both parties. I love to kind of understand what the motivation lies behind the decision making, but it's really important that both parties end up with a good feeling and a feeling that they have won the deal, especially because of the partnership, because that's a good starting point for a good collaboration and a successful growth story. So
makes sense. Any special things you're doing once the partnership is kicking off, or do you hand it over to someone else, or how does that work?
Yeah, so in my the current situation, what happens is that I'm in charge of all of the commercials and all of the full sales process, and then we hand it over to an implementation manager who does all of the more technical. But I am always there because I'm obviously the one that's built the long relationship and the good relationship. And in case of upsell, of course, we also have the commercial team stepping in. So it's a good collaboration between the commercial team and the implementation team, operations team.
Makes sense. So it's multiple people you're dependent on.
Multiple people. So I think you could say in the initial sales process, it would be commercial taking the lead, and then in implementation phase, it would be the operations team taking the lead. But then we are in close collaboration throughout the processes as well.
Makes sense. So what is it all these customers like about LUNAR? I mean, I remember one of my friends working in there showed me the product, like the interface itself. I have traditional banks, and it's fantastic. Like the user experience is just something else. So at least like from the B2C side of your business, it seems like I was just blown away by the user interface that it has. But what about these business customers or the partners that you have? You know, what is it they like about LUNAR?
I think it's probably also like what is banking service actually, and I think it's in the Nordics. Nordics is super complicated, right? Because we have 3 different countries, 3 different currencies, 10 different payment schemes. So if you have access to one of them, then that's great. But you only have access to Denmark. You still need access to Sweden and Norway. However, if you need access to the European zone, you basically just need access to 1 euro market, and then you have access to all of it. So it's super complex and it's super difficult to get access to. But LUNAR has been around for 8 years, and we've built this modern technology that is used by our 900,000 plus consumers that you are talking about, and businesses, and basically now we're opening that technology up for international fintechs, banks, who need access to this infrastructure, to local accounts and payments, and yeah, because it's such a complex market, it's they basically choose LUNAR because of the technology and because of the accesses we've created. So I've tried to think of like an analogy, because banking service and API and tech and infrastructure is like it can be quite complicated, right? And it's quite complex. But I think I like to think of it as like we have built the road, and now companies can use this road for a small toll. And the reason why we are comfortable and we are successful in this is because we know that this road is the fastest, most modern, and most efficient road across the Nordics. So I think that's the reason why.
I think it makes a lot of sense in banking and finance, right? That you don't have all these different entities building the same roads. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's what a lot of the banks are trying to collaborate around too, is not having to build the same road. I don't know how many banks there are in Denmark, but I think if I remember correctly, there's a lot of banks, like compared to how big we are, so that there's no need for people to build the same stuff.
There are a lot of banks, and there are a lot of traditional banks, and there is one challenger bank in the Nordics, and that's LUNAR. So I think there is we're in a good position in that sense.
When clients identify a need for basically entering the Nordic market, or they have a desire to do so, how do you guys get on their roadmap? How do they find out, well, there is actually a challenger bank in Denmark with a technology that I assume is much better than all of the legacy banks. How do you guys come on their roadmap? How do they even know you guys exist?
Well, that is due to, amongst other things, some of the way that we kind of expand LUNAR's presence, because LUNAR has been around for, as I mentioned, 8 years. We are a Nordic bank, so we have consumers and businesses in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and we're very well known in the Nordics. But outside of the Nordics, not a lot of people know about LUNAR. So we are at events, a lot of events, to basically be physically present and to talk to a lot of different customers and clients. And then we are also very lucky that we get a lot of references now already, because now the network is starting to know about us. So now there is a start of being a talk of the town that LUNAR can actually LUNAR is like has a good position in being a Nordic provider, a Nordic bank provider. But it obviously takes time to build that international presence. But we are doing I mean, it's fun to see the difference from a year ago to now, how much has actually changed.
Let's say you're going to a conference on Monday. It's Sunday evening. You got to pack your bag. What do you bring to a conference? Do people still bring business cards? I guess it's a thing, right?
Some do.
What do you pack? What do you pack for conferences?
We don't actually.
You're digital. You should.
The pioneer. Bring our phone and I'll link the QR code. what do I bring? I think a lot of these conferences, the big ones, they have a really good connection app, a networking app. So if it was Sunday evening and I was going on Monday, I would definitely start downloading the app and start seeing who would be attending. I do a lot of preparation work going to these conferences. It's basically a good place to meet everyone in one place, and then you can basically pre-book meetings with all of the relevant customers and clients, and then it's surprisingly efficient how much you can get from a 20-15 minute meeting because that's what you have when you connect at these events.
And also, I've never been to a fintech conference, but I've seen them on LinkedIn, and some of them look crazy. What's the craziest thing you've seen at one of these conferences? Because they can be big, right?
They are huge. I think I can't even remember the steps. So we were at Money 2020 in Amsterdam this summer, and we actually had a booth, which was pretty cool because obviously it's the first time, I guess, that LUNAR has a booth outside of the Nordics, and we had. I think LUNAR actually. I mean, of course, I'm biased, but we had the coolest booth. We had created a huge moon. And everyone was stopping by to see it, so I think that was quite cool. But there's like a lot of different halls, and I mean you basically walk from one meeting to the other in the separate halls. So it's a lot of walking. It's huge events. I also went to the Money 2020 event in Vegas last year. That was quite fun because the entrance is through the casino. So you basically had 15,000 people walking through in suits through the casino to get to the event. That was quite a fun experience.
Which casino was it at?
It was at the Venetian.
Okay.
Yeah. So
don't get any good ideas yet. but I remember going to these tech conferences in Vegas, and they were fantastic. I mean, these huge events. But it also struck me that there was a lot of people just sitting in big conference room listening to speakers, except for a few people that were meeting one-to-one outside. I think that's where I learned, because I was like, well, what are they doing? Well, they're actually selling. They're the ones who use the conferences to prepare, book meetings in advance, and to just make sure they meet with a lot of people there.
Yeah. There's a lot of inspirational talks as well at these events, and there's a lot of exciting and people to meet as well. But for us, it's a lot about meeting the existing customers, and building new relationships, and that is done over a meeting, over a conversation, and not so much at these talks. So I think the majority of the time is spent actually speaking to customers.
What do you do afterwards then? The conference is over, you met some people. Do you have a structure in place for following up on those people that you met with?
Yeah, so it's there is a lot of, so if the conference is 3 days, then there's 3 weeks of preparation just at booking the meetings, and then obviously afterwards there is also a lot of follow-ups. So you've had 15-20 minutes to basically pitch LUNAR and discuss, the how big of a priority the Nordics are. Let's be honest. I mean, Nordics is a fantastic place, but it's not the largest geographic area in the world. So it's all about prioritization. So there's a lot of follow-ups, a lot of meetings, and then depending on how far we are, then of course we follow the sales process. But typically we try to already do the qualification at the event. So the meetings are actually really fruitful when we get back home.
If we look at sort of the process of closing new partnerships, is there any sort of partnerships that you've done over the past couple of years that you remember particularly well? Because I know there's some really big and well-known companies among those that you speak to.
Yeah, there are. Actually, I was. Are you thinking about like the process or the?
Any specific sort of deal cycles or customers that you remember particularly well?
Yeah. Okay. I have a few. I need to think which one is the most exciting, because I think I have one quite fun one. I was I think when we work in sales, obviously you have a lot of you have an educational background and you get a lot of sales training, but a lot of the time, a lot of the things, at least for me, my experience is that you learn from peers and colleagues and leaders.
Sales is like payments, I guess, in that way. No one as a kid said, I'm going to be a salesman when I grow up. It's one of the things you stumble into and you learn along the way, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think I remember one deal where I had been quite successful for a couple of months, which was fantastic, but it also meant that there was a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations to me. And everything was basically sorted in terms of the alignments and everything, but the commercials, there was a very, very tough negotiation, and we couldn't agree. We had been back and forth many times. I think both parties felt that they had given, not just on pricing, but also a lot of other factors, and we just couldn't agree. So we were basically just stuck. And ultimately, I ended up walking away from the deal. And I had kind of heard rumors about a senior person in the company done that before, and I'd always been like, that's pretty risky to do that. And I remember when I did it that I was like, should I just call back and say, actually,
I regret. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Let's have another conversations. But it's really risky. And the days that I basically spent 6 months on this. And then at the final stage, I decided to walk away from the deal. I mean, I don't know, imagine that feeling is horrible, losing a deal after so many months. Then after 3 days, they called me back, ice cold, saying, let's do it. And that was probably the most thrilling conversation I had.
But the worst 3 days.
The worst 3 days. And I would say I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it because it's super risky and it's also really nerve-wracking. But that's... A few years later, it's a fun story for a good podcast.
And I guess it touches upon one of the unique things about sales, which is like it's emotionally really hard. I mean, you have to live with these ups and downs, these kinds of situations. I've always felt that really difficult, that you invest so much of yourself in it, and there's no guarantee that all the things that you do today that sales will come out in the other end. So it's a bit of like an emotional roller coaster to be on sometimes. Do you have any ways that you deal with that to, make sure that it doesn't affect your mood, your private life, anything like that?
I think, to be honest, it's difficult not to be disappointed if you lose a deal. I think there is also some empathy in working in sales because it is with people. So there is of course there is some disappointments if things don't go as you hope for or as you plan. But I think the key aspect as well is trying to keep it cool, especially towards the customer. And then the classic thing: don't bring your work too much at home, right? I mean, it's not worth too many sleepless nights. But I did have one huge deal quite recently, where we actually speaking of knowing LUNAR outside of the Nordics, when I first reached out, they had never heard of LUNAR. So it was really, really from the beginning and from the scratch, and really building that knowledge and the relationship up. Fast forward a few months later, we were deep in more than a few months later. I had a lot of meetings. We were deep in negotiations, and it was like, because it was a new product as well for us. It was always like, you overcome one challenge and then the next came up, and you agreed on the product solution. Then you needed to update the contract. So it was like quite a long process. And besides that, in sales, you're always under a lot of time pressure. Either from some external factors or from your management, but there's always an expectation to close basically tomorrow or at least end of month. So there is always going to be a lot of pressure. On top of that, we were also dependent on other parties than us. So basically, a lot of things happening and a lot of complexity. And as you said, the negotiation was a roller coaster. And to be honest, in the last couple of weeks, I think if I didn't have meetings, then I had phone calls every single day, and there was some disappointments during that time, because obviously it was a give and take, but it ended up that we signed the deal. Everyone was happy. And after that, it's usually it's quite fun, the first meeting after you close the deal, because there's been a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of negotiation, and then everyone is smiling and happy that that it actually worked. And a month later or so, we had this catch-up meeting on how it went with implementation, and they decided to basically extend the scope very significantly, much more than we had ever thought of in the initial process. And at that meeting, I was really trying to keep my cool, but I think it was very difficult to not hide the smile. But I think it's all about trying to control.
I've tried the complete opposite of that. I've tried where I've been working on a sale, get the confirmation, statement of work is signed, we have a kickoff agreed, and it's basically in the capacity sheet. I've written in the chat, I've told everyone, just close this deal. It's gonna be amazing. We're starting this project. Only for then a week later, very sorry, we changed priorities. We're not gonna do this right now anyway. And you have to then crawl back to take it out of the capacity sheet. It wasn't closed after all. I remember thinking after that, I'm not saying anything to anyone until we're doing this. It started already because you never know. I think verbal commitment, even that sometimes things can change.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think I thought about it because it's so hard to emotionally take to say, oh, doesn't matter. Obviously, you're going to be disappointed. But I guess the trick is that it doesn't influence your general mood, or that you get over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then I think it's easier said than done. But if you generally have success with other deals, then it's easier to kind of overcome some disappointments.
True.
If you put all your eggs in one basket and one deal and you lose that
sucks.
That really sucks. Yes. Yeah.
There's all this very stupid but also good advice from a salesperson the other day on LinkedIn, which was for the past 20 years I've exceeded all my sales target, and this is what I'm doing. I was like, oh, what does he do? I just make sure to have 3 times more in the pipeline than I think I need. That's the key to success. I was like, it's kind of a silly advice, but it makes sense. I'm sure that's going to get you there.
Yeah, well, that's a good advice.
Yeah.
Camilla, how much of your sales is land and expand, and how much, to what extent do you sort of get the full scope in under the initial contract?
Try to get as much in as in the first contract because it is actually an advantage for both parties. I mean, for us, it's obviously to get everything obviously agreed upon, but we also work with ramp up periods, and we work with phases. So we try to kind of uncover the scope from the beginning, and try to basically, when that's agreed, try and make sure that is implemented as well. But it's a bit different from client to client. I think some are very determined on what they want, and then we start with that, and then we slowly kind of expand from there. I guess our product offering as well is expanding. So and that has been doing that for the last year, and it will continue to do that. So there will be much more. Expanding the next couple of months and years.
Makes sense. But I guess generally in sales, there's this discussion. You're in charge of banking services sales, but the question is, should you spend your time, in the post-sale process, or should you let somebody else handle it? That discussion of how you spend your time and so forth. Would you be able to sort of manage or upsell customers to new things, even sell the project in the first place, if you just, understand me correctly, disappeared as soon as the contract had been signed?
I think there are typically also different motivations. I think there is the hunters and the farmers, and it's typically different kinds of personality types that like doing the initial sale, and different personality types that like to do the upsell, the relationship building, the long-term partnerships. I would say that each can do both, but it's more about the individual person. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
We had the last person Jeppe and I talked to is a guy called Klaus. He used to be head of global solution sales at ISS. So these major deals, you have to make a deal with the Ministry of Defense or something like that. And I remember seeing Klaus work, and what struck me as quite extraordinary when you're dealing with these big deals is, obviously you're a salesperson, but just as much you're an internal mobilizer, an internal hype person. You're trying to get different stakeholders involved, motivated, doing stuff. I don't know if that's your experience too. That you're a salesperson, but just as much you're an internal mobilizer and hype woman. You have to get people excited and pitch in. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, sometimes I feel like I work in both commercial, product, tech, and marketing.
Yeah.
And maybe also legal. No, but there is a lot of stakeholders involved, and I think it's all about obviously motivating as well internally, because usually the sales team or the commercial team obviously has really eyes on the close, and some of the other internal stakeholders don't necessarily have the same motivation in their work. So I think that's true. There is a lot of there is almost just as much as internal management as external management, stakeholder management.
I think I know, but what did you study when you studied?
I studied business and psychology on my bachelor's.
That's what I thought. Did that help you in any way, or does that help you? That understanding of psychology, how people think. I just remember seeing your profile and thinking, I could imagine that coming in handy, both for the selling part, but also that internal motivation of people and stuff. I have no idea if it does. Do you feel like that? Can you use stuff from your education?
I think it's all about people, right? I mean, it's all about what motivates people. It's all about uncovering the needs. It's all about what questions you ask, how you ask them. It's all about how you negotiate, and of course, it all helps when you need to close deals. And I think also, in terms of the actual business and psychology part of it, and especially in enterprise sales, understanding the organizations, understanding stakeholder management, understanding basically how organizations work, motivations internally. I think that's the key to success. But if I'm using actual psychology theory, probably not. But
maybe subconsciously, maybe it's in there.
In general, I have a huge interest in people and what motivates people. So
that makes sense. I think you gotta have to if you're working in that kind of sales that you do. I mean, the complexity of the stakeholder landscape on the partner side, but also just the internal stuff. I think you have to have an interest in people there, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Some of these accounts that you're working with, is it more like a local thing, or are you working on expanding out in the world and getting LUNAR's offering further out beyond the north, or how does it work?
It's both, actually. So we work with both local Nordic companies, but also international companies. And I think what's common for the companies that we work with is that either they need access to the Nordics, or they want to increase their efficiency in the Nordics if they're already here. And we work with a broad range of fintechs, cross-border payments, account-to-account payment methods, open banking providers, insurance companies, banks. So it's basically, it's fun because LUNAR has a Nordic presence and is a Nordic bank, but now our technology is actually relevant to the world all of a sudden. So it's but that takes me to Vegas and Amsterdam, so that's also quite fun.
That's all right. Maybe there's. I'm gonna ask you a really simple question. There's probably a really hard answer, but I often wondered, why didn't the banks just do what LUNAR did 8 years ago? Why was it so hard for them to do what LUNAR obviously are succeeding with? You any thoughts on that?
You mean local banks or international banks?
Let's say local banks. They why weren't they able to create that user experience, that technology product? Any thoughts on that?
I think at 8 years ago, and it still is, the banking landscape was composed by very traditional banks, all quite similar user experience. In terms of if there was an app, the front end was looking quite similar, and I guess it worked because there was not a lot of choice. I mean, you could change banks, but then there was there wasn't maybe a huge difference. Maybe you could get some better pricing somewhere, but the experience and the overall pricing structure, I mean, it was quite similar. So that was exactly why LUNAR was kind of founded and established to basically disrupt that very, very traditional landscape. So why did no one else do it? I mean, I think it takes some courage to build a bank from scratch, and it's a bold move, and it's really difficult, and it takes some years. But yeah, I think someone had to do it, and I'm really happy that it was LUNAR that did it.
Yeah. And I think they just succeeded really well in building a great product as well. I think that's one of the things that impressed me a lot when I saw it the first time, was just the quality of the product that was built. But it still strikes me as odd when you go to wherever it is that you trade your shares, for example, like Nordnet or Saxo Bank or whatever, and you have that experience, and then you try to do it through your traditional bank, and it's just a completely different, like Microsoft 95 experience. And it still strikes me as weird, as like why that difference exists between the two. But I guess that's also why banking services exist, that might become part of their product.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, like, it's always been like in LUNAR's mission as well LUNAR's mission is to be the best everyday bank, and I think it's also to make financial management and banking interesting, and not something that you don't want to look at, but actually something that you want to engage with. And that's also why the user experience is such an important aspect of LUNAR, because it's not just the technology, of course, that is the underlying aspect of it, but also the front end is super important, because that's the way that consumers engage. And there is a lot of shifting consumer expectations, and we are obviously obliged to meet them if we are to have a presence in the market.
Camilla, you while selling, you're also sort of slowly building a banking services sales team. How does that sales team look like in 2 or 3 years compared to what it does today? And what is it like building a sales team on the side of running some really, really large deal cycles?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely busy. I'm not bored. It's a lot of fun. I would say it's a great opportunity, and I think for banking services, it's just begun. So I'm really, really excited. To see where banking service is in 2 to 3 years. I mean, compared to where we were a year ago, it's very, very exciting to see the amount of clients and also who the clients are we're working with now. So in 2 to 3 years, we should have scaled the sales team also quite significantly. I like the kind of the approach of having closers, account executives, and then account managers or customer success managers to do the kind of ongoing account management and expand, to use your word, and then, of course, we also need to build up a strong marketing organization around banking services, and potentially also have, more focus on, lead generation, and also building up that kind of the whole outbound BDR organization as well. But let's see how fast we can do that.
Do you guys want to hear something that blew my mind that I found out the other day? Do you know Adele, right? The singer. You know that song, "Make You Feel My Love"? Blowing in your.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
You know that, right? Do you know who wrote that song?
No.
Bob Dylan. I swear to God. So suddenly I was listening to this folk music playlist in the morning, and suddenly I'm hearing Bob Dylan sing this Adele song. Like, what is going on here? And I thought maybe he did a cover. I went in Wikipedia and I found out that Bob Dylan wrote that song. And I thought it was such a signature Adele song that one there. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. So now, like, for the weekend, you try to go into Spotify and find Bob Dylan, "Make You Feel My Love."
I'll put that on my. I have a cover list for when you do music
there
quiz. I'll get that on. So who is the original? You can be surprised sometimes who actually made the original.
And speaking of music, you're going to a festival at some point too, right?
A LUNAR festival.
What's the LUNAR festival?
So it's the. I don't know a lot about it yet, because it's a big surprise, but. there is a summer party this year, and it's a LUNAR festival. So it's going to be basically everyone working at LUNAR. So from the Aarhus office, from the Copenhagen office, from the Norwegian and Swedish office, meeting all in one place and having a full day and evening celebration. And it tends to be quite a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of artists also joining, but everything is a little bit of a surprise. So I think the next couple of days we will slowly get more and more information. Yeah, exactly.
It's great when you have companies where it's geographically dispersed, that time you get to meet the people you might be on Teams calls with or have calls with, but just physically meeting up and seeing those people. Yeah. I think it's just a great event.
Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah.
The last thing that at least I'm really curious about is a little bit to what you said about building up the team here. Any thoughts on how your role is going to change? Because obviously you're very, operational, but at the same time you have to take the business development role. Any thoughts on how your role is going to change once you succeed with actually building out this business area here?
Yeah, it's true. Initially, and still is, I'm very involved in the sales process and very involved in the deals. I mean, that's also what I love. I love working in sales. And initially it was all about, figuring out, what was the market and, what's the strategy and like who are we, what partners are relevant. And I think now we have a pretty good picture. So now it's all about scaling banking services. And of course, my role will probably develop as well, and becoming probably less down in the nitty-gritty stuff, but also focusing on how to scale and build the team. I'm obviously not alone working in banking service. I work very, very closely with our tech and product organization, also our FCP and compliance organization. So I think it will be, but I'll still be very much part of the sales process. I think that's important as well. Like no matter how much you scale, I think it's still important to have those customer meetings, to be part of the negotiations, and also continuously be speaking to customers.
Totally agree, and it's also just there's a certain energy to that I would miss if I wasn't involved at all at an operational level, right? Yeah. Because that's also part of why you got into it and found it interesting, is that energy there is around being emotionally involved to the deals, having those meetings. But I guess it's about finding the balance between the two, being operational at the same time, making sure that you're building someone else to be operational too.
Yeah, but it's going to be nice because right now I have a lot of hats on, so looking forward to building the team around it as well.
Well, at least we're looking forward to inviting you in here again to hear how it's going with that at some point.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming in, and hope you have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any questions or requests, you can always contact us at info@kvadrant.dk. If you want to know more about Kvadrant Consulting, please be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter, or go to our website kvadrant.dk.